Now, when it comes to horror movies, I mean, what's a horror film without its soundtrack? Okay? Soundtracks in horror films, amazing combination. Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Halloween, the Halloween movies, Child's Play, The Exorcist, Silence of the Lambs. All of these horror films have kick-ass soundtracks. Iconic, catchy, and memorable. Now, Lights Out. Where do I start with the Lights Out soundtrack? It is awesome. Especially the end credit song. Yes, the end credit song. The composer, Benjamin Wallfisch, is a genius when it comes to music. Benjamin has quite a list of movies when it comes to soundtrack, including quite a bit of horror films, including A Cure for Wellness and It. And one that's not so horror, Blade Runner 2049. Just to name a few. But now, aside from the soundtrack to Lights Out, let's talk about the movie Lights Out itself. Lights Out. Why don't we talk about some of the issues I have with Lights Out? The only cliches, there's actually two cliches that I've seen in this movie. Number one, the villain had a connection to the protagonist. And number two, the villain came from a mental institution. Mental institutions are used prolifically in horror films. A Cure for Wellness is about a mental institution-ish. And Metallica's song, Welcome Home Sanitarium, was inspired by the Jack Nicholson film One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Mental institutions are quite overused. I don't mind the idea of a mental institution for horror films, but I feel that they are way too overdone. And I think that our antagonist for Lights Out, Diana, could have had a good backstory without the mental institution. But that's it. That's all I've noticed. Now, what I love about Lights Out, aside from the soundtrack, as I said in the first half, is the plot. So Diana is that stereotype monster that only exists in the dark. It always seems that way with horror films, that the monster can only exist in the dark. But Diana, aside from light being her weakness, unless it's a black light, an exterminator's black light, the black light that you use to search for scorpions with. If you use a black light and Diana is after you, that's not saving you. But if she's after you and you've got a flashlight, or if not a flashlight's all over you, you should be safe for the time being. Diana always finds a way to rip them off you without hurting herself. But aside from her weakness, Diana is a manipulative, evil villain. She can get inside your mind. That's pretty scary. And what's even scary the most about Diana is that there are people like her in real life. Oh, sure, with the skin condition and all, but manipulative. Some people are so good they can get into your head and just brainwash you just by speaking to you. That's the kind of villain Diana is, and that's what I found quite terrifying about her.